2, 3.
Welcome to the Smartest Amazon Seller Podcast. The goal of today's show, like every show, is to help you be a better Amazon seller, understand the e-commerce game. And you know what? Like, I've got a very special guest. Many of you maybe have heard of them. You should, because I just went on to sellerratings.com and they're number one. They're at the top. I have with me the CRO of Pattern, John Lebaron. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Scott. Pleasure to be here. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So CRO, let's unpack that. What do you, how long have you been with Pattern, and what phases have you seen them go through?
Yeah. So it's a pleasure to be. This company is amazing. You'll note if you go to Seller Ratings that the number one seller today, as of today, is iServe. That was the name of the company when I joined it. We rebranded the company, renamed it to Pattern, but we kept our seller name just because we didn't think anyone really cared. And Pattern, I don't think was available anyway. So I think we just left it at iServe. But that was indeed the name of the company. I think there were probably 40 some odd employees when I joined. And I was hired as the first marketer. They had no marketing. And I told the CEO at the time, he found me on LinkedIn and reached out. And I just said, I don't think you need marketing. If you're doing $100 million in sales, I think you're doing it right. So don't hire a marketer and ruin anything. And he disagreed. And anyway, long story short, I've been there for 4 years, as long as I've been at any company. And Chief Revenue Officer is mostly just because, CROs at most companies handle both sales and marketing. And that's what I do here at Pattern. And but it's kind of a dumb title because I actually don't oversee any revenue. I oversee all of the pre-sales motion of getting brands interested in what we do and signing contracts and actually buying their inventory. So there's actually an outflow of cash when we sign with brands because we buy their inventory. And then it transitions to a post-sales motion of actually activating those brands, selling through their inventory, and ultimately generating revenue. So that is done by our Chief Brand Officer, Josh Barron. And so he probably should hold the title CRO, but semantics, I guess.
Yeah. I didn't really I know I've seen your guys' website before that when you guys close a deal, you're also saying well, when we close a deal, we're also going to give you, a 6-figure check. We are going to come with a big purchase order.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that helps, people understand actually what you do is you buy inventory and you're selling it. And you guys target the biggest brand partnerships in the world. How do you see the landscape, and how do your brand partners see Amazon and other marketplaces?
Well, I think I see it as a tremendous opportunity, to be honest. There's just so much opportunity. It's a $6 trillion global market. You've got Alibaba in the mix. You've got certainly Amazon Global in the mix. You've got JD.com. You've got, a lot of the periphery in there in terms of Mercado Libre and Lazada and other, marketplaces, eBay, even, and Walmart and Target, and now Kroger. It feels like every retailer is introducing a new marketplace as the weeks go by. So I think they look at it as a somewhat complex yet lucrative opportunity. And honestly, in a lot of cases, just a must-have is to have a good brand presence on these marketplaces.
Well, what about brands that maybe at some point in their leadership, they're maybe dragging their feet going on to Amazon? They're not quite the Nikes of the world, but there's some brands that have a lot of history and they've succeeded on their own on e-commerce, but they see Amazon as maybe they don't control it as much. So when you come across someone that's dragging their feet, how do you approach that?
Yeah, it's interesting, and you alluded to this earlier, we don't actually sell anything, right? We buy stuff. And so it definitely changes the conversation with brands. And the mantra that I kind of have with my team is to be helpful, knowledgeable, and present, and just staying in front of conversations. And sometimes these take years to kind of ultimately progress. And it's not my business per se to convince someone to do something that they're not ready. If they're not ready to be on Amazon, who am I to say that they need to be on Amazon, right? I think I look at it as a very consultative sale and help them understand the pros and the cons. Ultimately, if someone ever says I'm not on Amazon, I do a quick search and say, I think you actually are on Amazon. What now? The degree to which, even Nike might say, we're not on Amazon anymore. It's like, no, you're definitely on Amazon. You're just not represented well there because of the strategy that you've chosen to go to market on that marketplace.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just mostly highlighting the pros, the cons. Our biggest brand, honestly, they were probably doing, $13 million a year on Amazon when they came to us, let's call it 7 years ago, predated my time. But they said, we're thinking of, this was a vitamin and supplement that was only distributed through doctors. And they said, I think maybe we should just get off Amazon entirely because it's causing problems. And fast forward, I think that brand is now like the number 4 supplement brand on all of Amazon. And they're not widely distributed still, only through doctors, but they have, they're probably doing over $150 million a year on Amazon. So it's always helping, think through what is the strategy you want to employ, what are the results you want, what do you want to avoid doing, and let's choose a path that ultimately kind of gets you closer to your goals.
So I think you hit it. Like some people, what I was kind of saying, some people dragging their feet. That also is just like they just don't have a strategy, and so what that means is, some random distributor out there could actually be doing their Amazon strategy for them without their knowledge, and that can create all sorts of issues. And you guys have a history of just making cleaning up channels for brands. Has that evolved over the years, becoming easier, or has it actually become harder? Do you feel like Amazon is leaning towards the brands and like their interests, or like the world of sellers?
Yeah, I would say the great thing about Amazon is that they are incredibly customer obsessed. And I feel it as an Amazon customer. It's easy for me to return stuff. It's easy for me to order stuff. It's easy for me to find stuff. So I feel that benefit as a customer. Decidedly, brands are not Amazon's customers. They don't, even though they quote unquote kind of help pay the bills. If you are a brand, I would say you're very much like a second-class citizen to Amazon. Yeah, I haven't found them to be crazy responsive to brands. I haven't seen them trying to lean in for brands, whether it's on a margin conversation or a pricing conversation or a brand control or a counterfeit. It's just not in their DNA. Their DNA is to focus on the customer, which are, you and I are customers, but not necessarily on the brand. And that has a lot of different ramifications for the brand in terms of them deciding what they're going to do. So yeah, in terms of like, just back to your earlier question of dragging your feet, there are a lot of reasons why a brand should not go on Amazon. And there are a lot of really good reasons why they should, and just being super transparent around what those are and what they look like. Because the last thing, and just in terms of, answer that question, it's very hard to put the genie back in the bottle. I don't see Amazon leaning in toward helping brands figure these things out, supply chain or control or returns. I mean, I was talking to this underwear manufacturing brand, and she was like, man, I've had all these crazy cases of Amazon shipping used underwear as new to customers. And it's just like disgusting. And it's like, so they're not necessarily going to figure that out. In terms of the marketplace cleanup, it all starts with the brand.
For a customer obsessed company, the fact that like, this is like 6, 7, 8 years later from when that problem was like popping up. Like we've even had like one of my private label brands, we sell this like pancake kind of maker thing.
Yeah.
And it was delivered to someone, and like it actually had food inside of it. It was one of those like these little balls that you steam. I mean, like their quality control, like I don't know. The
horror stories are real. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But if you have a clean channel and you go on Amazon, you're going to have a clean channel. If you have a dirty channel or a widely distributed channel, or if you have unauthorized sellers and then you go on Amazon, you're going to have those same issues. So I would say Amazon mostly magnifies whatever channel strategy you're already employing. for better or worse.
So, I like we said, you guys were like in the top spot as of today, but you guys also raised a fair amount of money. I would argue, I can make a very good argument that like pattern success is just like it's going to happen. It's like almost inevitable. You guys have, what is it, 500 employees?
I wish. I think we have 1,200 employees at this point. So
really?
Yeah,
okay, I thought I overestimated. So yeah, like that many conversations, that many like things like you're going to grow and you're going to win, good deals. But what were some of the early day successes back when you were at 40? Like what made Pattern like stand apart from, there are similar people that sell in a very similar business model?
Yeah, I mean, I have to credit our founders, David Wright and Melanie Alder. Dave and Mel are just, if you've ever met them, incredibly genuine, authentic people. And I think they're always just trying to do the right thing by the brands. And I think that, when I came into the world of e-commerce, and it's not my background at all, but especially into the marketplace, like third-party sellers had a very bad reputation. And I would say in some cases they still do, but it's like literally like a dirty word. If you try to make a sales pitch, and honestly, even like if you go to Expo West or you go to some of these big shows and you're like, hi, I'm an Amazon seller. It's like, I don't want to talk to you. It's like, give me the Heisman, no one wants to talk to an Amazon seller. So just to answer your question, I mean, like incredibly partner obsessed. That's like our number one core value of the company. We only have 4 and everyone knows the values, but like being partner obsessed. And I'll just give you a story to illustrate that. Like when they started out as like any arbitrage seller, right? Dave and Mel did. They ran the company for like 3 or 4 years before they really decided to pivot to this model of brand control and profitability and acceleration. So they were selling, I think, insoles, and they bought from a distributor. They chatted with the brand. They bought a bunch of inventory. They signed the MAP policy. And I think I did like 10,000 units or something like that. And first month, I think they sold 1 unit. And they called the distributor and they're like, hey, man, like these aren't selling. Everyone in the buy box is selling below the MAP price. And he's like, oh, I know, it's this massive issue. We're trying to solve it. Just give us another month. And so another month goes by. They sell like 2 units. And they call again. Oh man, I promise. Like 3rd month finally, and he's like, guys, we can't figure it out. We can't control it. Just fire sell it and sell it for whatever price you want, basically. And so Dave went back, to Melanie, like, hey, I guess we just got to like start lowering the price. And she's like, no, we signed a contract. We would uphold MAP. And Dave's like, well, I know, but like, the distributor, we bought it from them and they said we could lower the price. And she's like, we didn't sign the contract with the distributor. We signed it with the brand. And she's like, I'll just buy back all the inventory with my own money. So we're not out anything on the business. And Dave was like, I'm not going to make you like buy all the inventory. Like, let's just try to do that. Let's just fix it. And so that's what really pivoted. Like you talk about these businesses growing and on small hinges, like that integrity, and B, that insight of like, and so they went back to the brand, not the distributor. They went to the actual brand of the insole and said like, hey, we notice you have all these unauthorized sellers or people selling below MAP. If we could fix that for you and with you, would that be like a thing? And they were like, oh my gosh, you'd be like our best friends, but you'll never fix it. We've been trying to deal with this forever and you'll never fix it. So that was back in 2015. But I think that started down the path. And I would just say that other pivot was like, they started to create software to track unauthorized sellers and MAP compliance. But instead of selling it as software, they kind of said, hey, to really fix this problem, it's going to cost a lot. And I don't think brands are going to want to pay us $100,000 a month to fix this problem. But if we actually just buy on the margin and we're actually cutting them a check instead of having them cut us a check, we actually think we can make it work. And that started down this whole impetus of the evolution of the business.
Yeah. I actually didn't know that's how they started. That's actually really cool, because I bet you about a third of the people listening to it right now have had that same thing where like signing that policy, you start selling it what you think is like, okay, these margins are great, you're not gonna work with this. And then like, a dozen people undercut.
Yeah.
So that's really cool that like they started just like very much like everyone else. Have so many like resellers, but
Yeah.
leaned into like a problem that the brand was having. That is the early days. That is their probably their first success story. So okay, let's. Everyone likes to, this the title of this podcast like is about Amazon, but there's more marketplaces out there. What, in your opinion, are like some of the biggest emerging marketplaces outside of Amazon?
Well, I mean, for sure, you have to look at China. I mean, I think Amazon did somewhere in the name, different estimates on 21. Go ahead.
I don't think anyone listening to this podcast has ever heard that answer. So so it's not obvious to us. Like we people here in these States, we sell on Amazon. Sometimes we'll like dabble in Walmart. I kind of don't recommend it as a strategy, but like, what's going on in China?
Well, I mean, like, you just look at overall e-commerce penetration rates, right? Like before COVID, I think the US was somewhere around 17, 18% of all retail sales going through e-commerce. Post-COVID, it's like 22%. So we fast forwarded in the US 10 years. If you look at the curve, and I think Marketplace Pulse just came out with a graph of this, like the US is supposed to be somewhere in the neighborhood, I think, of $975 billion in GMV going through not just Amazon, but all e-commerce, all digital platforms in the US, which is up. I mean, that number was like 300 or 400 million just a couple of years ago. So it's massive. And I think for every percent increase of penetration, like 3,000 stores need to close. So you just look at like where that's at, that's huge. Okay, well, China has a population that's like whatever, 4x the US or more, but their e-commerce penetration is already 50%. So if the US market from an e-commerce perspective is $975 billion, China's already like almost 3 trillion by itself. And Alibaba by itself is like 1.12 trillion in GMV. And the second biggest player in China, which is JD.com, which gives like six-hour delivery across all of China, or like 98% of China or something crazy. JD.com is like over 500 billion in GMV by itself. Now, when again, Amazon's 600 billion globally. So the number 2 player in China is almost eclipsing Amazon globally. And again, those two account for, over $1.5 trillion of GMV.
Why are US based e-commerce sellers? Why have I not heard? I knew that you guys had like a little bit of a presence globally, and even like, even with JD.com. How come people don't talk about that here? When should they? When they should be like, okay, when should Nike go to JD.com? Or like, let's not say Nike because they have their own issue, but like, when does that make sense?
Oh man, such a good question. I would just say like the reason that I bet you don't hear about it a lot is because, like I said, there's somewhat of an antagonistic model, I would say, between brands and the third-party marketplace seller community, because so many of the sellers are what I would call arbitrage sellers. They're not truly partnered with the brand as part of their supply chain or part of their distribution network. They're literally like skimming off of the inefficiency of those networks and arbitraging it for their own gain, which is like, who am I to judge? But it's like, that's the reality. China is no different, right? There are tons of, and you kind of like can't out arbitrage an arbitrager, I guess is my point. And so it's like, China becomes pretty tricky. And if you're a seller, I would say a lot of people are tapping into those marketplaces to try to bring new products to market on the US marketplaces, because you can source them more cheaply. So people are going to AliExpress, or they're going to Tmall, or they're going to Taobao, or they're going to, Lazada, or whatever these Alibaba properties to try to source product and then bring it over here to the States and reskin it or rebrand it. But that opportunity is massive. It's just, you have to be very, very good. And then to answer your second question, if you are an actual brand and you're trying to expand into China, it can be a complete money pit, or it can be like the best thing ever. And a lot of it just comes down to, what are the substitutable products that are already in China for whatever you're doing? Because again, most of them were manufactured, whether it's chewing gum or whether it's energy, or protein supplements or whatever. A lot of it is manufactured over there anyway. So it's not like you're going to bring something novel back. But if you have a very strong brand, or if you have a lot of brand awareness, or if there's a lot of latent demand for the product you sell and they're not substitutable products in region, that creates a massive, again, almost reverse arbitrage opportunity for you to go in and start to really take some good share in those markets.
Here's so I did an analysis once and published some of our findings that in the private label space, China does fairly well, except for like one or two categories. The category that they do the absolute worst on Amazon.com is grocery. You could, you think of like, I'm talking like private label, like people that are like building their own brands.
Yeah.
I guess you'd probably have to be more of like a compliance expert. But like, would that make sense for someone that's like in grocery where like, when you've got like something that's like really unique, there's a lot of IP in food. Would that make sense to take that over to China? I don't know. I'm just trying to like think this through and see where Americans may have an advantage or an entry point.
Well, I mean, Americans definitely have an advantage in a lot of ways, because if you think about the e-commerce, and the dynamics are just so different, right? Like you can't apply an Amazon playbook in China. Literally, Amazon exited China. They're no longer there because they could not compete for a number of different reasons, right? So anyway, so I think you have to look at it less like, is there a category that would work, and focus a lot more on like, what is the actual dynamics of whatever you're trying to sell? So for example, we have over 100 employees, probably 150 employees in China today. We have 3 offices, we have bonded warehouses, like we're in it to win it in China. And, but like, I think 91% of all transactions that we sell in China include at least one customer service touch point. So that's like a dynamic in China that's like really, really crazy, is people don't trust whatever you're selling because they've been scammed so many times. There's so many knockoffs. People sell like fake eggs on Amazon. I'm like, how can you build a fake egg cheaper than a real egg? Like it like boggles the mind. And so people don't trust it. So that's what I'm saying. Like if you have a US brand, it's inherently a little bit more probably trustworthy if they believe that you are in fact the owner. But there are all sorts of like trademark regulations. So what we start to look at is like, is there demand for the product on Taobao, which is more of like a B2C type of social type network in China that has a ton of sales. And then if you want to move over to kind of like the mainstream Amazon-esque, which is another property of Alibaba called Tmall.com or JD.com, which is a competitor, you just need to make sure that like there are 2 main markets or 2 ways into the Chinese market. One is through domestic representation. You have like a domestic store, and the other one is cross-border. And cross-border is basically, you don't have to necessarily abide by all of the different product testing and requirements and health and safety in China that you would if you're being represented domestically in packaging. You can just ship it from Hong Kong or from Tokyo or even from the US into that market. That's what we call cross-border. And so, but that can still be very expensive. It might cost you over $100,000 to set up a flagship cross-border Tmall store in China. And so I think you just have to, A, you have to know what you're doing, but B, there has to be like a pretty compelling event. I had talked to a ton of brands that are like, oh, let's just try to see it, throw it up and see what sticks. And I'm like, you think it's hard to be buried on the second page of Amazon search results? Wait till you get to China and there's like 1 billion people searching for stuff and you're on page like 200. Like it's not enough to just show up. You actually have to have both an online and an offline activation strategy to be successful in that market.
Basically all I heard it through that was you guys are light years ahead of everyone else. That's like, I don't think anyone I've ever talked to, and I've, had hundreds of conversations, really takes China seriously. And sounds like, having employees on the ground is just the starting point.
Yes.
And here's a question. Have you, with this entry point that you guys have in, have any other Amazon-centric brands reached out to you guys like say like an aggregator, it'd be like, hey, like you guys actually have figured out China. Like, um, do you get in those types of conversations?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen as regularly as it did probably even 6 months ago, but it still does happen, and we just tell everyone no. Basically, I mean, we kind of see
Well, because
Go
these aggregators are full of brands manufactured in China, and you're
Yes.
like, you guys have nothing new that this market doesn't like already has what you have.
Well, not only that, I think it's just more of like a strategic decision of like how in bed with your quote unquote enemies or frenemies do you want to be?
Oh,
In
sure.
some cases, by accelerating a brand in China from an aggregator, like we potentially see that they're not truly the brand. I mean, they're the brand owners because they bought the brands, but they're not like truly a brand that we're partnering with to go into market. But we see that even with existing brands that are like really want to go to China. And the first question I usually ask when someone's like, I really want to go into China is like, are you ready to lose money for 5 years? And that really shapes the conversation of like, oh, this isn't just like free, easy money. It's like an investment that's going to pay off over a long period of time. Now, there are almost every brand we take to China starts making a bunch of money, but I think it's more the principle of, are you looking for a quick, easy win? Because doing regulatory, doing animal testing, doing all the stuff that's often required to get into a market that complex and that big, paying $100,000 for a Tmall flagship store, like doing all that is very involved. And so again, even if you say like, have you done a competitive analysis or a landscape or done your pricing for the region? And they're like, what does that mean? It automatically shows you like, oh, you're probably not really serious. You're like kind of putting your toe in the water versus you've made a board level strategic commitment to opening up this region or accelerating this region, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no. I love this conversation. I mean, I don't expect many listeners to like roll out into like JD.com or like into China, but just hearing this, hearing the complexities. We know a few of these, you know, like if you've gone into Europe, but it's really cool. So one of the things that connected us is that you guys, Pattern, is putting on a big event here in Salt Lake. And I'll give full disclosure, you know, Smart Scout, actually, we are, helping sponsor it. We're the lowest tier sponsor, but like we'll beat it. So I love it. It's my hometown. And so, but tell us about the inception of this idea and what you think most people can gain out of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the inception of the idea was we were going to a lot of shows ourselves, whether it's Prosper or Shop Talk, or, you know, we're kind of running the circuit as well. And I just felt like so many of those conferences were based on, you know, this isn't necessarily bad. It's not like a flawed strategy, but they were based on, you know, trying to have like just and inundate you with a ton of people. It wasn't really, from our perspective, content focused. It wasn't experience focused. It wasn't learning focused. It was very much like connection and trade show and sponsors and booths and get wasted at the bar and like all that sort of stuff. It was like that experience. And so we just thought, you know, and I'm sure you feel this as well. Like I'm talking to so many mind-blowingly smart people every day, and they're just blowing my mind about the space or about Amazon or about, you know, Seller Central or about, you know, advertising or whatever it looks like. And we just wanted to create a space where the very best and the brightest, because at some level we're not competitors. We're all in this together. And there are people that are building tech platforms. There are people that are offering services. There are people that are doing, everything from like market share to digital shelf to, you know, whatever it looks like. And it's like, is there a space for all of these people to come together and learn from each other and learn from the best and brightest? And so that's what it was. And so that's basically the whole track. Is not a lot of, you know, kind of like networking opportunities and after hour stuff. It truly is pretty regimented speaking sessions and hearing from, I mean, Amazon will be speaking, Walmart will be speaking, Mercado Libre will be speaking, Alibaba will be speaking, the North Face, Stance, like all these awesome brands are going to be chatting.
Yeah. You have, I actually think a very, unique and different mix of speakers, some big names. Before I tell you who I'm interested in listening to, you're actually going to be presenting, I believe. But who are you most excited to listen to?
Oh my gosh. Like I have been totally man crushing on Jimmy Chin forever. Obviously he's like, National Geographic photographer. He's an elite athlete. If you follow him on Instagram, it's just like a joy to see all the places around the world. I watch Miru, I watch Free Solo. I mean, it's just like his craft and his expertise. And you would normally think of him like e-commerce, like he doesn't necessarily come to mind, but again, the whole concept of accelerationsummit.com, it's Accelerate is the name of the conference. And it's all about accelerating people in their lives. And I look at someone like him of what he's been able to do, accelerate his own career, the people he's surrounded himself with and accelerating their career. So I'm super excited for someone like Jimmy Chin, but I'm also, I don't have like a big speaking slot. I'm probably speaking for like 10 minutes or something like that and kind of introing other people.
Yeah.
But I think that's what I'm most excited about is just hearing from these folks and learning about what makes them tick and how do they get into, influencer marketing, or how did they get into logistics, or how did, what has been their journey and what are the biggest things that they're learning that they can share back to the audience. And in theory, if you attend this conference and a couple of days in you go back home, you should have way more connections and super smart people that you can lean on and call on to solve your toughest challenges. And you should leave feeling crazy inspired and crazy like supported, I guess, as well. Like you should feel like, oh my gosh, I can go do this, because it's hard, it's lonely. You know how it is. Like it can be incredibly difficult and challenging world to be in because it feels so cutthroat. It feels so like you just run into dead ends all the time. And so I think having a community that can rally around you and accelerate you to do your best work is exactly what this conference is about.
Yeah, I'm super excited. You guys got Neil Patel.
Yeah.
He's definitely a keynote speaker in most places that he goes. I listen to his podcast. But like Jimmy Chin, Neil Patel, Kristen Bell, and the list goes on. There are some really big recognizable brands. And I like I said, I'm just excited. It's in my backyard. So, I believe, yes, we do. We actually have a coupon code that people can use. It's just Smart Scout. If you use Smart Scout on the checkout page, I believe there still are tickets available. So I'd try and get your tickets soon. It might sell out right before. So things always tick up a lot in the days leading up. So yeah, I mean, I think you guys are creating something really unique, and you guys are putting a big foot forward into this. So
yeah, and truly, this is not a pattern conference. Like our CEO is the only person speaking truly with a slot. All the other breakouts, all the other main stage, you're not going to hear from Pattern. So it's definitely not a commercial for Pattern at all. In fact, we distanced ourselves and didn't create a user summit for that reason, because in theory, in a couple of years, we may not even speak at all. It should just be the premier kind of conference where the best and the brightest minds and the companies and even some of our own competitors are kind of quote unquote on full display, sharing the very best, latest and most innovative strategies to accelerate brands on global e-commerce.
I love that. I mean, this conversation alone, I think, to anyone listening was proof that you'll stand to gain a lot. This is a different flavor than most of our conversations, because I mean, you guys turn away brand partnerships of people that do less than 4 or 5 million on Amazon. You're like, oh, that's not exciting for us. You guys are so that alone should say a lot. But John, thank you so much for coming and talking about everything, and even opening up what makes the success that Pattern has today. One thing I like to ask guests before we close out is if you have any smart hacks in either life or business.
Oh my gosh, this is a smart hack for a dumb guy. But I would just say surrounding yourself with amazing and brilliant people is like, to me, the hack. And it sounds so trite, but it's like, we all have a limited amount of time. We never know when we're going to go. And, you really are a product of the people that you surround yourself with. And so I remember having a conversation with Dave when I joined the company, and I just told him, listen, like, I'm coming here to work for you. I want to grow. I want to learn from you. You're an incredibly talented entrepreneur and a great leader. But, if for some reason, like, it doesn't matter how much you pay me, it doesn't matter what stock options you throw my way. Like, life is too short for me to sit around and work for people that I don't respect. And as long as you, continue to inspire me and like, just be a good, solid human being, well, like, I will give you the very best years of my career. These are the best years of my life right now that I have to give to someone. And if I'm not giving them to myself, starting my own company, I'm going to give them to someone that I really can get behind. And, to his credit, he has done it. I mean, I was on a red-eye flight with him out on Sunday night, and he got home 2 a.m. We both got home, so it's like, he's putting in the work, he's hustling, he's not coasting. He's there every single day, and he's a genuinely like a good, human being. And so those are exactly the sorts of people that I want to be able to like wear out my life and do the best work in my career with. So it's a trite hack, but it's a very smart hack. And it's just like brought me so much joy to surround myself with these smart people.
I love it. I love it. I mean, that's like for every stage of life, even if you're in high school or college, like the people that you're spending time around, you're going to gravitate, you're going to be motivated to what they're motivated. So I love it. Actually, I didn't mention the summit is, the conference that we were talking about is the Accelerate Summit. It's accelerationsummit.com. So that's, if you guys want to join, I'll be there. John will be there, and it's going to be awesome. Like, that's all I'm going to say. And so check out the site. Thank you so much, John, for coming on. And so to all those listening, make sure, you do the usual. If you like this podcast, please share it with people that you think might be interested. So we'll end there, and stay tuned till next week.
1, 2, 3.